Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us today as we present today's Tech Talk on What's New in Project Operations 2023 Release Wave 2. My name is Adi Vijayashankar and I'll be moderating this session. To present today's session, I'm joined by my colleagues from FastTrack, Amar Kumar, Venkatesh Vadlamani, and Martin Walker. With that, let's dive in. In terms of agenda, we'll first cover the What's New features in Dynamics 365 Project Operations 2023 Release Wave 2. We would also like to cover use cases and demos. Against each feature, we have indicated the reference to the corresponding business process catalog and the deployment type in Project Operations. In the end, we will share useful resources and have some time for Q&A. So, the most time-consuming step in project creation is developing a task breakdown structure or project plan. Established divisions can rely on the luxury of best practices that have been incorporated into project plan templates. However, for new organizations and teams, creating project plan templates can be a daunting task due to the lack of knowledge and best practices for the type of work required on the project. Generative AI can create a work breakdown structure for a project using the natural language description of the project to help project managers and reduce their learning curve, making this step less daunting. Therefore, in this feature, Generate Project Plans using Project Manager Copilot, a project manager can generate the work breakdown structure using generative AI in a project. Once the project description is updated, generative AI can produce a hierarchical task structure for the project with durations. The project manager can then edit the task plan for any changes, add or remove tasks, edit durations, and add dependencies between tasks with a great starting point. This feature is available for light and resource non-stop type deployment. Let's look at a use case where Contoso Consulting USA is a professional services company who implement ERP for various organizations. Contoso will be using Project Operations Resource Non-Stop to manage their projects. As project manager for D365 implementation, June Law wants to create a project plan. To prepare the project plan quickly and more efficiently, June Law would like to use the new task plan feature in Copilot to auto-populate the task in work breakdown structure, which she could then use to make updates. So let's look at it in the product. We're going to create a new project with the name Dynamics 365 ERP and CRM implementation. After this, we're going to provide enough details in the description, which will be an input for the Copilot. So in this case, we will indicate the phases for the implementation, namely initiate, implement, prepare, and operate, and then save the record. Then we select the task plan from Copilot. As you can see, the tasks are updated automatically based on the description given while creating the project. The project managers can edit the task plan for any changes, add or remove tasks, edit durations, and add dependencies between tasks. So this is a great starting point in the project. Moving on to the next feature, customers running large, complex projects across various industry verticals often require detailed project plans to sequence and assign their work with a level of granularity designed to mitigate project risks and to drive clarity in each work package. While the WBS limits were originally increased to 1,000 tasks in 2023 Release Wave 2, it has been subsequently increased to 1,500 tasks in the latest release. Increasing the WBS limits to 1,500 tasks enhances the flexibility and complexity of project planning and management by providing an enhanced capability to generate comprehensive work breakdown structures for up to 1,500 tasks. This feature is available for light and resource non-stop type deployment. The next feature allows saving changes in project for web data in project operations asynchronously and includes a notification that displays the status for the save operation and date it was last saved. It also notifies the user about the last time a project was saved or displays the status of an ongoing save operation to anyone viewing the project in project operations. The notification displays under the project's name. These changes ensures that users can trust the data they are looking at and validate that it's accurate and up to date, and they're aware of when the save operation completes. This feature is available for light and resource non-stop type deployment. So edits in the work breakdown structure trigger an asynchronous save to update Dataverse with duration depending on the size of changes. The various icons that indicate the save statuses are, you'll see a blue spinner, which is indicating that the save is in progress, and the green check mark indicating that the save is complete, and a red cross indicating that the save has failed. Let's look at the next feature. So project operations has a current limit of 300 team members per project. This limitation is imposed by the task planning engine of Project for the Web. Some customers have projects that don't require advanced project planning and work breakdown structure capabilities, but may require many team members. For these projects, a typical usage paradigm is to manage them as externally scheduled projects because that removes the need for planning the project using Project for the Web. As you might be aware, to use the external scheduling mode, you select the value externally scheduled in the scheduling engine against the project. After this mode has been set up for a project, it can't be changed. Please note, this value can be updated via a normal web API. However, if this needs to be done manually, the field must be made visible on the form. This feature is available for light and resource non-stop type deployment. So resource recommendation capabilities aids project managers to review the resources intuitively, compare multiple resources, shortlist, and proceed to book them for the project. This helps in addressing resource challenges where availability and skill match are common challenges in resource scheduling for project managers. Project managers can balance various priorities such as cost utilization, availability, and skill match, which can sometimes conflict. They can assist with choosing an internal employee versus external resource. This feature is currently in preview and available for light and resource non-stop type deployment. So prerequisites for getting recommendations on best resources for the project includes enabling the feature and project operations in Dataverse, enabling the data flows for the environment. Please follow the sequence as indicated and use system administrator credentials. Activate these data flows in sequence and check the refresh timestamp before using this feature. For additional details, refer to the documentation link. So let's see this in the application. First, let's select the project and we're going to navigate to the task list and validate the task details. So in this demo, we have kept this simple and very shortly you'll be able to see the tasks on the screen. As the next step, let's navigate to the Team tab, and you'll notice that we have Consulting Lead as a role linked for the task. We're going to select the row and then click on Suggest Resources. This opens the resource recommendations filtered for Consulting Lead role. This list can be redefined by adding other organization units from the filter. Additional information about a resource can be looked at by clicking on the information icon. And clicking on Next helps in navigating to the next resource. So as you can see, we're now looking at the details of resource Jill David. Let's click on the information icon against Jill's availability, and you can see that it provides additional help text for the field. We also have an option to compare the resources. So in this demo, we're comparing Jill David with Martin Walker. We can continue with resource booking and also shortlist the resources we like. So let's select Jill David. And we're going to continue booking, and which takes the project manager to schedule book for next step. Now coming back to Team tab, we can see resource requirement generated. And in the resource requirement, we can see shortlisted resource, Jill David, as well as the organization unit to which the resource belongs to, which is USPM in this case. Let's move on to the next feature. The Use Employment Default Dimensions on Integration Journals feature is added in Feature Management. This feature recognizes the financial dimensions that are specified on the employee from time entries and expense entries and brings the employee reference into the integration journal. The employee's financial dimensions apply to the integration journal, and costs are posted with the employee's financial dimensions to both the project subledger and the associated general ledger voucher. Financial dimensions are defaulted into hours-based transactions that are based on the financial dimensions specified against the employee. This feature is available for resource non-stop type deployment. So let's look into a use case here. So Contoso Robotics USA is a professional services company who implement ERP for various organizations. Contoso will be using project operations resource non-stop to manage their projects. All employees are expected to submit their timesheet weekly by 4 p.m. on Friday. So in the employee master, Contoso Robotics capture the service line financial dimension of each employee so that it gets captured while timesheet is being processed in project operations. So if Adi is a solution architect working in the business application department, he's set up as an employee in the employee master of USPM with strategy consulting as a service line financial dimension. So when he is submitting his timesheet in project operations, Adi's resource is linked to the integration journal and costs are posted with the financial dimension into the project subledger and associated general ledger voucher. So to make this feature work, two different features are needed. One, worker to bookable resource, and two, enabling default financial dimension for bookable resource. Let's look at these configurations and subsequently we'll get into a demo. So starting with worker to bookable resource feature, this prerequisite must be completed for this feature. Dual write solutions are required to be installed. Dual write maps with initial sync direction should be complete. And there's also a reference link for more details. Now let's look into the subsequent setup, which is for enabling default financial dimensions for bookable resources. Dual write solution must be enabled. We're going to enable this feature, use employment default dimensions on integration journals, and make sure that the dual write map is enabled with initial sync from CE to FNO. There's also a resource link here for more details. Let's now jump into the application. So we have an employee record for ID in FNO, and let's add skills against this record. First, we're going to add accounting as a skill with relevant rating and level date. And then let's add another skill here. So the next skill we can add is can select from this, we can select maybe budgeting. And we can update similar details, that is level 5, and also indicate a level date. Now we're going to navigate to Dataverse side to bookable resource, and let's create a new record. Now we're going to select the user, and in the worker lookup, let's find ID. And for reference, we can copy the worker ID from FNO. In this case, we can see the worker ID is 000963, and we can search with this worker ID in Dataverse. Now let's validate the employment record in FNO. Let's go into work history, select the active employment, and we're going to navigate to financial dimensions and map the relevant financial dimensions. So we're going to say the business unit as 003, which corresponds to management consulting practice. And then against the service line, instead of IT consulting, let's choose strategy consulting. Navigating back to Dataverse, we can see the skills, accounting, and budgeting, which are mapped against the bookable resource here. Now let's look into the financial dimension on the project against which we will record the time. So the selected project has the financial dimension for service line as IT consulting. You will note that this is different to the dimension against the worker, which was strategy consulting. So now let's make a time entry against the project for resource ID. So ID is going to log in and create a new time entry. After selecting the project, we're going to select the task and the role. Once this is done and after keying in the time, we're going to subsequently submit this timesheet. Obviously, after submission, the timesheet will get approved. And now let's validate the integration journal in finance and operations. So in F&O, once the actual has been transferred to the finance side, we can validate the integration journal. So I've selected the integration journal here and clicking on lines. And once you can see that against resource ID, it has been mapped against actual, and we're then going to post the journal. So if you look into the posted voucher, we can see that while the project has been posted with service line as IT consulting, the corresponding payroll allocation has happened against service line strategy consulting, which, as you can recollect, that was mapped against the worker while configuring the worker data. And that's the data that is then passed into the voucher. With this, I'll hand it over to Amar.
Next feature that we are going to discuss is about create budget with summarization doing estimate import. With this feature, it provides flexible forecast line creation from budget by summarizing budget lines at a task, role, or a contract level for better budget forecast management. This feature is available for light and resource non-stock type deployment. So let's quickly look at the use case. June law, the project manager has already created the task plan and assigned the generic roles for the task. Now, while he wants to generate budget based on the estimate, while generating the budget, he wants it to be generated at a higher aggregated level for cost budgets. So for budget analysis, for different projects, the need of the granular data could be different. For example, let's talk about project A, which might need budget analysis to happen at a project role level, while for a different project B, it might be needed to be summarized at a task level. So if we'll talk about the process, in any project, the first thing that we do is create the WBS estimate that is the complete work down structure. The next step for budget definition would be to create a budget period against that project. And once the budget period has been created, we can either create budget without summarization, or you can again create the same budget with summarization while we are importing the estimate in the project. Now, the summarization dialog that we have, we'll see in the demo, is only available if the budget is at the initial version. And we'll talk about that. And initial versions can be imported, re-imported, tweaked, and changed based on the need of the project. But once it's been approved, we would not be able to import the initial version. So moving on, let's quickly look at this demo. So in this, we already have the project created here. And if we'll go back and create the first thing, which is the budget period for this project. So let's quickly move on to the budget and click on budget and then move on to create budget period. While we are in the budget period, we can define what budget period we want to create. So we are creating the complete period for financial year 2024. With financial year 2024, we can talk about what is the fiscal start date, which is January, and then we can also start highlighting what is the start date and end date going to be for this particular budget period. So we are talking about the complete year. And once we save, all the relevant period that is needed for this definition would be created. So we can see all the period starting week, month, and quarter definition has been created with the right start and end date. Once the budget period has been created, we can move on to look into the import of estimate. So let's move on. So now we can see in this project, we have already defined the WBS. Now we have 4 tasks. And again, the task role has been mapped. Now we can go back to budget again and click on create budget and then to import. While we are importing, the dialog opens for import budget. In this import right now, we are not changing anything and we are importing budget as it is. So now import can take a couple of seconds based on the data volume that you have. And the dialog clearly shows that budget import from estimate is in progress. So once it's complete, we can refresh, and after refresh, we can see the budget tab started appearing against the project. Now, if we are at the budget tab, we can see that version 1 has been created in the draft, and all the 4 lines for cost, which is linked with the estimate, has been coming here with quantity and amount, and same for the sales line as well. So if we'll go to the sales line, we can again see that the 4 lines and with the sales value have been started appearing. So this is how we import the budget based on estimate import without any summarization. And at this point, we can go back and look into how do we do summarization. So that is something that we are going to capture as part of the next demo. So let's quickly move on to the next one. Now, on this same project, what we are doing is we are looking at different options. We have submit, delete, import, but right now we are going to re-import the same estimate. And while we are importing this time, we confirm the import dialog. And at this point, only for the cost budget, what we are doing, we are going back and saying that, hey, we want to summarize the cost budget to the role level, right? And so once the import is done based on the cost summarization, now we see the cost only have two lines based on project manager and consulting lead, and the quantity have been aggregated. But the sales budget, we see it is as it is, because while we imported the budget again with summarization, we only summarize the budget for cost and not for sales. So that's how the summarization is working. And once the summarization is done, any analysis that will happen against cost and sales, that would be using this imported budget after approval. Right now, the budget is in draft version, and next in the next feature, we'll talk about how we can approve and do additional steps in the budget. So let's quickly move on to the next feature. This feature is support historical tracking using project sales budget. While we are highlighting this feature more in the context of sales budget, this feature is also going to be applicable for cost budget as well. So now let's go through the details of this feature. So as a project manager, I would be able to create different snapshot of the project at different life cycle stages, and which will also allow me to accommodate revisions and any scope change that I can see. So when we talk about budget revision, project manager might need to revise the budget based on the new scope or any changes that they are seeing in the project. And also, let's say, while during the execution, there are some additional ongoing build sales that have been updated against the project, which was not actually initially planned. So that's where this feature helps with planning budget management and also time-based forecasting, because at every different snapshot level, we would be able to generate the fresh budget here. The details of this can be referred to the documentation. Now let's quickly talk about the use case. So let's talk about Contoso Consulting USA again, which is a professional services company implementing ERP for various organizations. Contoso will be using project operations resource non-stock to manage their project. Definition of budget and proper versioning in case of revision becomes the important ask by project manager. June now, while he is working on a project, he can easily create budget based on the initial estimate and also can accommodate any possible change in the subsequent revisions that he would be doing, right? So let's look at the process of the budget historical tracking. So the very first thing that we do in a project, we create the initial version of the project by importing from estimate, which we have seen as part of the last feature. Once the initial version had been approved, that becomes the version. Till then we need a new budget revision, and budget revision is needed in case, let's say, we have booked some unplanned actuals. For example, initially, let's say we have planned the budget with certain estimate and certain roles, but a new role which has not been estimated has also booked some time in the project actuals. So in that case, we might need to include that as part of the budget revision. And second use case, when we need the budget revision is, let's say, if the project realities have been changed. That means when you have started the project, you may say a typical role like consulting lead might only need 200 hours, but after a couple of weeks of execution, you figured out that consulting lead might need 250 hours of their effort. In that case, again, we can update the budget forecast, and based on updated forecast, we can include and generate the budget revision. And the third thing is, budget revision at present doesn't include any change in WBS estimate. So let's say once we have approved the version 1, and after that, there has been some change in WBS, that is not included at present in the product, although there is a planned roadmap to bring that in the product. So let's quickly look at the demo. So we are continuing with the same project that we have seen in the last demo. In this project, if we want to go and look at the budget that we have already seen, so we see that costs have been summarized for roles and sales has not been summarized. This version 1 right now is in draft. So both cost and budget versions with cost with summarization and sales without summarization is in draft. Now we can go back to budget and submit this budget for approval. Once the submission has gone, the budget can get approved, and once the budget has been approved, we can again go back to approve budget tab and validate the approved budget. So right now we see that in this case, both the lines have been approved, and we can also see sales and cost line across all the different periods that we have defined. So right now, we want to see the sales budget. We can see across all the 4 periods, the budget have been already qualified. Now, if we want to go on and look at how the revision works, let's go back to the next demo. So now we have version 1, which has been approved. What we can do right now is we can go back to the Teams tab. And in the Team tab that we see, we only have planned project manager and consulting lead as part of the original estimate. While we plan for the original estimate, due to some requirement, we have also booked actuals in the same project for a totally different role, which is field service role. So right now, if you'll see, we have booked 18 hours for field service role. And this role was not planned initially as part of our WBS estimate. That means this is unplanned actual. And second thing that we right now know is in the same budget, while we initially planned for the cost side, that will need only 136 hours. Let's quickly move on to the cost quantity. So you can see the cost quantity for consulting lead is only 136 hours. But now the project manager is aware that he might need 160 hours for consulting lead. So what he can do is he can go back to forecast quantity and modify that forecast for consulting lead to 160 hours in the approved budget. Now what we have done is we have again this project booked some unplanned actuals and also modified the project for one of the role. At this point, we can click on and go back to budget and do the revision. So let's see, 160 hours is there. Unplanned actuals have been booked. We can go back to budget and do the revise. So if we go back and do the budget revision, budget and revise. In this dialog, we can select what we want to do. We can either select forecast, we can either select unplanned actuals, and we can select both. So in this case, we are going to select both. We are selecting use forecast value, and we are also selecting create budget lines from unplanned actuals. While we are selecting the second one, it will also ask from what time we would like to consider unplanned actuals. So we are considering unplanned actuals from 21st of July. So now we can click on revise, and that will generate the revised budget. We can see version 2 have been generated once the import is done. And let's quickly analyze that as part of the next one. Quickly moving on. Now, if see there's a version 2 that's been created. In this version 2, the first thing that we see, the field service role have been included with 18 hours, both in cost. And now if we'll go back to the consulting lead line, which is the third line, we see that quantity have been increased to 160. So now what we have forecasted as part of earlier version 1, that forecast have been included as part of the draft version 2. And also the field service lead have been come. Now this has happened for the cost line. We can also go back to the sales budget line, and we'll see that sales budget that we did not do any forecast change, but field service role that unplanned actual was booked, that has started appearing because field service role was something where we have both sales and cost line being generated. So that now the version to include both that, we can go back to the summary tab, and we see that summary tab for the cost budget tracking, there's a difference between budget and forecast, and that's correct because in the case of cost, we have included the consulting lead from 136 to 160 hours. So approved budget is less, but forecasted is more. But in the case of sales, there is no change because there was no modification that we did for the forecast. Now, we can quickly go back and approve version 2. And once approval is complete and we refresh this, then we can see that now for the cost, both budget and forecast have been coming out to be equal. Now, if we go back to budget tab, we can see that version 2 have been approved. And once the version 2 have been approved, we can also go back and see the snapshot of version 1. And this snapshot shows that version 1 has status as revised, and it still shows the data that was there when the version 1 approved. That means no field service and consulting lead at 136 hours. But if we go back to the latest version, we can see that in the cost side, we have field service appearing, and if we go to the quantity, we can see that 160 hours is appearing. And that's how the whole process of budget revision works, which gives a different snapshot to the project manager, and also highlight an option to revise the budget if we have new unplanned actuals booked or anything that can be changed in terms of effort estimate. Only thing that I wanted to call out is right now, any change in WBS estimate is not going to be considered while we are doing the revision, but there is a work item that's been planned for that. And next is a Copilot feature, and it is assess issue and risk using Project Manager Copilot. So if you talk about this feature, what it does, it provides project manager an easier way to do the periodic assessment of the project. So Copilot can read the data in the project, the timesheet and details posted, and based on the data, it can generate risk and issue in project operation. And once the risk and issue is updated, Copilot can also help the project manager to think about risk mitigation. So Copilot generates mitigation plan for the risk identified, and project manager would be able to modify and customize each plan based on their requirement. Now, if we go back to Copilot status report, and then Copilot will read the data and generate the risk and estimate. So now, if we look at the risk and estimate tab, we see that it talks about what is the source of the risk. It says AI suggested. Project manager can also go and update manual risk. It talks about what's the subject of the risk, the basic description, the risk probability based on what analysis Copilot would have done, and also a mitigation plan which Copilot generates, which project manager can again select and modify based on their need. So right now, this is a very handy tool for the project manager, because Copilot is able to read the metadata of the project, and based on the booked timesheet or expenses, it can figure out, okay, if project is running on schedule, or if the Copilot is seeing any identified risk that project manager should be aware of. Right? That could become a very handy tool for project manager to explore and figure out what they need to do in this project to make any kind of mitigation and corrective actions that they might need. And this feature talks about generating the status report. So if you talk about project manager, they are required to send project status report to internal and external project stakeholders periodically. A project status report contains information like work progress, financial target. It takes generally a couple of hours for a project manager to gather this information and present it to different stakeholders through the status report. Considering a typical project manager may be investing 5 to 10, maybe engaged in 5 to 10 projects at a time, it can eat up several hours each period for the project manager just to generate and maintain the status report for different projects. With generative AI now, project manager can create a status report just with a click of the button. The status report again reads the metadata and define the key highlight of the project KPI and commentary, so that it is to the point and well articulated to different stakeholders. Now, project manager can also edit these descriptions as needed and send the report to both internal as well as external stakeholders. The topic in the status report covers following and more, which is project tracking, vendor and employee productivity, work progress and deliverable tracking, the profitability and revenue targets for the project, and also the invoicing status. So let's we'll talk about the use case. What we're talking about, project manager who is implementing 365 implementations, he would also like to generate internal status report for the internal stakeholder. So to prepare the status report quickly and more efficiently, what he can do is he can click on Copilot and generate the internal report. Now, for this project, we are going to status report and clicking on internal report. Now, if we see the internal report here, that shows that, okay, what is the status of project overall, if the project is on budget or not, the basic summary of the project, then also the financial of the project, that means how much time and material and expense have been booked, and it also gives the right sort of tracking. And it also talks about the work detailed by different resources. So you can see here, but all the things, it gives the information about different aspects of the project and also a running commentary about all of the detail that we have just seen. Now, project manager can download this report, edit and modify based on her understanding and share that with internal stakeholder. Similar external report can also be generated by using the Copilot, and that can again be shared with different stakeholder that could be external for this project. That's how the Copilot can help project manager become more efficient, and also maybe generate internal and external report and be more efficient and complete the task on time. So with that, let me hand it over to Venkatesh for the next set of topics. Over to you, Venkatesh.
The next feature we are going to speak about is using deferrals for stock or production project scenarios. There is an increasing trend in modern organizations to transform the business models to sell project-based work and subscription-based services in a consolidated contractual manner. Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance has released new features to help manage subscription-based services. The features include the ability to configure and use advanced cost and revenue difference. With those updates, organizations which are using Microsoft Dynamics 365 project operations for production or stock scenarios will be able to support these features. Let's look at the use case for this. Conteso Consulting USA is a professional service company who implement ERP for various organizations. Conteso will be using project operations stock deployment to manage the products. So Conteso agrees to pay for a yearly subscription for a support contract upfront, or a yearly subscription for a product that is software product that is being used across the entire tenure of the project. However, they would have to buy it upfront. So the cost incurred to it is in the first week of the project itself. But they would want to defer the schedule for the cost when they are actually posting it to the P&L accounts. So using advanced costs and revenue deferrals, Conteso can go about doing this. And similarly, Conteso has the capability to actually split the invoices associated to it and defer it across over a deferral schedule while they are recognizing the revenue associated to the bills. So let's look at the place where we set this up. So under project management and accounting, under setup, under posting, you can create a new project groups of project type, time and material. And under the ledger tab, you could actually set the project cost for our expense item to be deferred across the deferral schedule. And similarly, you could also set the revenue associated to our expense item and fee to be deferred across. Please be noted, this is only available for stock deployments and only against the time and material projects. Let's look at the next feature, which is cancel PO receipts with connected item requirements. This is again in stock production scenario. So this feature provides a streamlined process for canceling product receipts for purchase orders created from projects which are not yet invoiced and associated with the item requirements. Features that needs to be enabled are enable patterns with cancellation for item requirements, enable purchase order product receipt cancellation with linked item requirements. Enabling these two features, users can actually cancel the posted item requirements packing slip. The reversal for the posted project transaction will be created based on it. The original entry and reversal entry are connected to each other, so they are not available for further adjustments. Let's look at a quick demo of the same. So we have a purchase order which is received. And if we look at the line details under the project tab, we have item requirements for this against the project which created it. If we go into the details and see the delivered quantity and navigate through the packing slip journal, you'll be able to cancel this. Let's look at the next feature, progress-based billing on fixed price contracts. So this feature enables project managers to efficiently split the milestones with percentage of work completion to provide enhanced billing capabilities. Till now, we had only a fixed set of milestones. Now we could actually split a milestone based on the percentage of the work that is being completed. This is available in preview for light deployments, and it is in our roadmap for resource non-stock deployment. Let's look at how do we set this up. Creating a milestone against the project contract line with invoice schedule type as progress base. You will be able to create milestone lines. And once you set this up, inside against the milestone, you have a percentage for next invoice, which is highlighted in the loop. Based on the value that is provided for this percentage, the milestone is split into two lines. One is ready for invoicing, the other one is not ready for invoicing. And you could use these features to split any milestones when you enable progress-based billing feature. Improved project invoicing usability and performance. We have delivered quite a number of features associated to improving the invoice revision process that significantly reduces the time and also gives flexibility to correct project baselines on a pro forma invoice. This is available in light and resource non-stock deployments. So one of the critical aspects for project manager is ensure that he is accurately and timely invoicing. So the newly added features provide additional efficiencies that helps in achieving his goal. So with just few clicks, PM efficiently reviews upcoming invoices in a project management and identifies discrepancies with these. Correcting billable hours is now possible, effortlessly revising them as well. Adding a missing billable items to an invoice during the review is possible now. Then we can actually flag complex transactions to be reviewed later and maintain focus on the work. And then finally evaluate the changes that have been made across the invoice amount and gain confidence in approving it. Finally, we have also introduced a couple of improvements in terms of throughput by leveraging X multiple paradigms and parallel CRUD operations to ensure that we give better throughput so you can actually have more lines on an invoice. These enhancements help the project manager to efficiently manage project financials and generate invoices in a quicker fashion. Support for intercompany vendor invoices in resource and non-stock based scenarios. The implementation of this feature brings significant business value by empowering AP clerks to efficiently document and manage intercompany invoices for D365 project operations in a resource non-stock based scenario. Let's look at the use case for the same. Quantoso Consulting is a professional services company who implement ERP for various organizations. They have presence in UK and USA. Quantoso will be using project operations, resource non-stock deployment to manage their projects. So Quantoso subcontracts their tax services for their customers to a supplier. These services are required for customers of Quantoso UK, which is GBPM, and Quantoso USA, which is in US, which is called USPM, and the supplier are based in United States. In this context, supplier can send the invoice for services performed for the customer of Quantoso UK to Quantoso USA. Let's look at the demo quickly for this. First, we would need to create a pending vendor invoice in legal entity USPM by using a project which is available in legal entity GBPM. Now, let's fill the details associated to it. Let's post the invoice. Upon posting, we can navigate to Dataverse project solution and identify the vendor invoice associated to this. We can confirm the vendor invoice to the project. Let's navigate to the vendor invoice header. Fill in few missing details here. And once you confirm, there will be actuals generated for it. So for one line of vendor invoice, you will have 4 actuals that will be generated, which is of type cost, unbilled sales, resource unit cost, and interorg sales. Those are the first 4 lines that we have on the top. Now, the next step is to run import from staging in USMF. Now let's post the integration journal that is created by the import from staging process. Now the next step is to run the process of creating intercompany customer invoices after this. So we select GBPM here and then generate an intercompany customer invoice, which actually creates a pre-text invoice in USPM. Let's navigate to accounts receivable and the pre-text invoice. Let's open the pre-text invoice that is created just now. Let's post it. Upon posting this free text invoice, it generates a pending vendor invoice in the legal entity GBPM. We navigate to the same. And upon posting this pending vendor invoice, the cost which is incurred associated to the project is then attributed to the project subledger. So if you just navigate to the project, now look at the posted transactions, you will see that the cost is reflecting against the project now. Block vendor payments for vendor invoices until PM approves. This feature is enabled using feature management. Enable hold vendor payments for vendor invoices till PM confirms the invoice for resource-based non-stock scenario. This is available only in resource non-stock scenario. This helps the organization hold the vendor payments until the PM authorizes the payment for it. So let's quickly look at the use case for the same. Contaso Consulting USA is a professional services company who implement ERP for various organizations. Contaso will be using project operations resource non-stock deployment to manage the projects. Contaso subcontracts tax services for their customers. After completion of the task and validation of the invoice received from the subcontractor, the PM would like to approve the payment before it is processed by the accounts payable clerk. After enabling this feature, you will see 2 additional parameters in project management and accounting parameters. The ones which are highlighted in yellow, manual verification by PM is required, and block vendor payments till PM confirms. So if you enable both of these parameters and post a vendor invoice, you will have the vendor transaction generated as soon as the vendor invoice is posted, but the highlighted Boolean checkbox will be disabled, which is approved. Until the PM approves it on the Dataverse, this won't be enabled. So without this field being enabled, this value being enabled, AP clerk cannot actually process a payment for this. But this doesn't stop the AP clerk completely. It doesn't block it. In case of exceptions, you can always come down to this particular transaction and set it manually to approve, approved as true, and then process the payment for the vendor. Next feature is the new capabilities we released for Expense mobile app. This is based on Power Apps mobile for real-time expense submission. The app has capabilities to create expenses and expense reports. It has OCR capabilities to read receipts and extract relevant information. It provides capabilities to add new receipts, attach and detach receipts, and delete receipts. You can actually save, submit, and recall expense reports as needed, and you can also approve expense reports using the app. Now, there is a detailed tech talk on its capabilities that is already delivered. The link for the same is available on the slide. This is only available for resource non-stock and stock production scenarios only. Let's look at the next feature, which is support prospect on quotes. Enabling this feature, now the sales managers can actually go and create a quote against the prospect type of an account. Earlier, this was not possible. This is available for light deployments and resource non-stock deployments. Let's look at how to use this. So first you create an account of type prospect, and then you create a quote using this account. And when the quote is closed as one, this needs to be ensured that the prospect is already converted as a customer. Copy quotes and contracts across legal entities. This is specifically for resource non-stock deployment. When quotes and contracts are created, a legal entity is associated with these records for customers who deploy resource non-stock scenarios. When a copy is required for this one of the existing quote, it may be needed to recreate it from the scratch, associating a new legal entity and an alternate delivery model. Using this feature, you could overcome this challenge and increase the efficiency of the sales managers. Let's look at the use case for the same. Quantaso Consulting USA is a professional service company who implement ERP for various organizations. Quantaso will be using resource non-stock deployment to manage their projects across various regions. John Law, as a sales manager, has already created a quote for services provided by Quantaso Consulting USA to a customer. Now John Law needs to create a new quote for services provided by Quantaso Consulting UK, which is similar to the quote that John prepared earlier for Quantaso Consulting USA. Note, this can also be used exactly in the same way for copying contracts across, copy a contract across. So on an existing contract, you have an option to click copy contract button. Once you click that, the dialog opens. And in this dialog, you have an option to change the customer contracting unit currency, requested delivery date. And you also have an option to say whether you want to copy the pricing or not. Is support cost plus pricing for resource time. Please be noted, this is in review state and it's applicable for light deployments and resource non-stock deployments. Many professional service organizations derive their bill rates as a function of associated cost rate of a resource. This empowers organizations to derive these prices directly in project operations and saves times, and also provides the flexibility and eliminates need for external tracking sheets which perform the same calculation. This also enables a risk-free kind of pricing to build the time that is associated to a resource booking. After cost plus pricing feature is enabled, this cannot be disabled on an org. Please be noted about this. And this can be done from feature control on project operations app on database. Contoso Consulting USA is a professional services company who implement ERP for various organizations. Contoso will be using project operations resource non-stock deployment to manage their projects. Scenario one is when billing to a customer, Contoso Consulting USA decided that they need to maintain a 25% margin across all the costs that is occurred when resources are booked time against the project. Using this feature, the sales price for the resource time can be arrived as a markup on the cost actual, ensuring the margin is constantly maintained. Scenario two is whenever there's an upfront fee collected to ensure some kind of initiation for the project. There could be a scenario where Contoso Consulting USA wants to provide a discount against a particular sets of roles like PM, technical lead also, to cover the upfront fee that is already collected. So using this feature, the prices can be defined to actually provide a negative markup on whatever is the cost incurred for the time that is for PM and technical leads. So under the price associated to the contract line, you would need to go into a price role. You can create a new price role and specify the price calculation method to be markup over transaction cost. So this disables the price field, which is locked right now, and enables you to specify the markup percentage. Specifying this markup percentage as a positive value will be defining a sales price, which is a percentage higher than the cost price. A negative value would be a markdown scenario, which essentially is a discount. The next feature that we are talking about is advanced subcontract capabilities. This feature is part of a larger subcontracting process in project operations, and as part of these features, subcontracts are visible to account payable personnel as a purchase order with receipts auto-generated upon work completion. Account payable personnel can match invoices to report work using the three-way matching policy in Dynamics 365. This ensures that we are preventing incorrect invoices. Then we intend to have a deep dive tech talk that would cover the capabilities of subcontracting in future, because it's a very large feature in itself. Please take a look at the other resources that we have, where we have links to the blogs from our leadership. In addition to other using information, you could also plug into community and on the customer and partner source. The roadmap is constantly being updated and lets you see what's being worked upon.
So I think with that, we have answered all the questions that's come up. So thanks everyone